What does that mean? Anybody know? Have you ever heard of it? So what does it mean? All of you've heard of it, probably somewhere down the line. Okay. Manifest destiny. This is kind of the period that we're going to deal with starting today. And it's kind of this period that leads us right into the beginnings of the Civil War. You got to piece it apart, okay? And really what it means is, or what we kind of think it means, becomes a little bit more apparent when you talk a little bit about it. The term manifest destiny actually was coined in 1845, okay, by a newspaper editor named John O'Sullivan, encouraging people to move west. Had become a big deal. Newspapers were encouraging people to expand the country, okay. And O'Sullivan wrote, and you guys can read this for yourselves, that the right of our manifest destiny to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent, which Providence has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty and federative development of self-government entrusted to us. Okay? It's a right such as that of the tree to space of air and the earth suitable for the full expansion of its principle and destiny of growth. So like the tree grows, okay, so should we. Our branches should expand, our roots should go deeper. But it's really that first part, the right of our manifest destiny to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent, which Providence, and when you see P capitalized like that in Providence, what does it mean? God, okay? Overspread and to possess the whole of the continent which God has given us for the development of the great experiment of liberty. Okay, so pretty clear right here. What are we thinking about? Number one, expansion. Okay, that it is our right to expand ourselves essentially from sea to shining sea. Okay, God has given us this continent. We're going to expand into it. We're going to take it, and we're going to govern it. Okay. Now you got to remember there are other people that are here, okay? And there are some parts of this that don't exactly belong to us yet, remember? Okay? So, when you think about that, then it's also very nationalistic, right? It is very almost we're going to do this because God says we can. Okay? So, this is when we start talking about manifest destiny. This is what we're talking about. And a lot of it involves expansion. A lot of it involves some pretty aggressive talk. Okay? And it is going to involve a war. Okay? That we will have to fight to make sure that manifest destiny is achieved. So that's where we're headed. Okay? And I wanted to kind of throw that out there to you first, to kind of let that be in the background. Okay, because that's kind of where we're headed to. That's the goal, okay, kind of this whole period. And you're going to see this talk, this manifest destiny talk, ramp up. Okay, and it's already ramped up when you go back and think about it. One of the first things that I told you about kind of during, right as we sort of left off that last period of politics, we talked about, for example, Texas independence. Okay, the Texans had gone out and had fought to break away from Mexico. And now they are this independent little Republic of Texas out there. We won't recognize them because Van Buren wouldn't recognize them because why?
He didn't want to start a war.
We didn't want to start a war, okay? And if we recognize Texas independence, then the chances are that Mexico is not going to be real happy about that. So the Republic of Texas is out there sort of on its own, and it has to survive. And one of the things it has done in that meantime is go out and try to negotiate treaties with other foreign powers. The British especially, because the British would like to see a little buffer zone there between the United States and some other places. And so the British they're pretty they're pretty hip to negotiate with Texas. And of course, they could get another supplier for cotton. Okay, so that's not a bad deal. So keep that in mind. Okay, there are a lot of little things that are going on out there that are sort of fanning the flames, if you will, of manifest destiny. Okay, so and we've already kind of hit a few of them. Okay. All right, let's talk about the election of 1840. Okay, Martin Van Buren had been when we last talked about presidents, we talked about Van Buren. Van Buren had been Jackson's hand-picked successor. Okay, Van Buren has unfortunately been hammered by Jackson's policies. The Panic of 1837 had hit. Van Buren's done, let's face it, kind of a lousy job of helping the nation recover from that. And a lot of it is because Jackson still has his claws into Van Buren and is telling him not to do certain things, which might have actually helped the recovery. So whatever, Van Buren is not doing very well. And the economic problems from 1837 on, plus the fact that you have a growing opposition party, the Whigs, who have organized simply to oppose Jackson's policies, mean that Van Buren's in trouble. Okay, Van Buren and his running mate Richard Mentor Johnson, they're in trouble. Okay, we tend in America to toss out presidents that have ruined the economy. If we blame them for some sort of economic downturn, then they get tossed. Okay. In a couple of years, when you get in the second part of this class, all right, when we get to the Great Depression, for example, the Great Depression hits under Herbert Hoover's administration. Was it Hoover's fault? Well, not necessarily. It's probably his predecessor's faults, but doesn't matter. We blame Herbert Hoover, and what? He gets the toss, okay? My grandparents, before they died, they were people of the Depression. And they hated Herbert Hoover so bad, they wouldn't even say his name. Okay? So that kind of tells you that kind of mentality. Okay? If you have to suffer through an economic downturn, then chances are you're going to get tossed. And Van Buren is. And like we said, Van Buren has to take the blame for much of what's been going on. Okay? So Van Buren tries the sub-treasury system. Van Buren tries these things to help recover, and it doesn't work. And of course, unfortunately for Van Buren, he's going to have to take the blame for it, and we chunk him out. His opposition is William Henry Harrison. Okay, William Henry Harrison is the hero of the Indian Wars in Indiana. He is most famous for leading the fight against the Native Americans at the Battle of Tippecanoe. And since they put into place his vice president, John Tyler, as his running mate, it made a very campy, of course, slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Okay, and you've all probably heard that. It's one of the greatest, probably, political slogans ever. It has a way of rolling off the tongue. It's fantastic, okay? The problem is that there are actually several problems with this duo, okay? Harrison doesn't want to kind of feel like a has-been, okay? He had, the Battle of Tippecanoe is, several decades old, okay? And he doesn't want to be kind of this flash in the pan. And so he kind of wants to be seen as an intelligent, as a worthy sort of president. But the campaign, all right, the Whig campaign really plays on Harrison's attachment or Harrison's background as being kind of this frontier guy, all right, being this sort of born in a log cabin guy, okay? So that's a campaign pin, okay, from 1840. Okay, remember me telling you how campaigns are starting to do the things that you all associate with modern campaigns. Okay, remember everybody gets a campaign pin. You go to a campaign rally and everybody has a pin on them, right? So on their lapels or on their hats or whatever. All right, so this is starts very early. But the idea was that Harrison had been born in this log cabin, was rough and tough, and was a great Indian fighter, and so they're playing up on that image. And Harrison, unfortunately, doesn't really want to be known for that. Okay, but it's a great campaign. There's a bandana. Remember me telling you that you get a bandana from the campaign, or they're handed out at parades or at meetings or at picnics. Okay, and you all know it's free advertising. Okay. I told you, I think I mentioned already, I may have told this to the other class, that sometimes this gets known as the Log Cabin Insider Campaign, okay? Because at many of Harrison's rallies and parades and picnics, because he was kind of shown as this backwoods guy, one of the things a lot of the backwoods people did, okay, was make cider, okay? You might know what cider is?
Yeah.
All right.
It's apple juice
And if you ferment it, it becomes very alcoholic, okay? There are kind of these levels, okay? And cider has just really kind of, as a beverage here in America, has kind of just started getting going. But in Europe, cider's a huge beverage. A lot of people drink it at the pubs instead of beer, but because it has a little bit more alcohol in it. But you can kind of cross a line here, and you get from going to cider to scrumpy, and I mean scrumpy it's got a lot of alcohol in it. Okay, and so at these campaign rallies, they were rolling out these barrels of cider, and what was everybody doing? Getting blasted, okay? And then, of course, Van Buren is like, whoa, what do you do? You can't do that, okay? You can't just wheel out the barrel here and get everybody drunk and start buying votes by getting all of your people drunk. That's not fair, okay? Not very American. But that's what began to happen. So you can kind of see the political cartoons there. You see Van Buren running away from the barrel that's about to roll him over, and what's written on it? Hard cider, okay? And that's unfortunately what does happen to Van Buren. Van Buren kind of gets log rolled here, okay? Because he's the president when the economy goes bad. The Harrison campaign has a lot of momentum, and that's what's going to eventually defeat him. When you look at the returns, okay, you look at the results, you can kind of see what happens here, okay? And he gets 53% of the popular vote or so. But look at the electoral vote, okay? Harrison just beats the dog out of him in the electoral vote, right? So Harrison got 80% of the electoral votes, okay? That's a hammering, okay? So you can kind of see what the deal is, okay? Now, this is interesting. This is the first time, really, now we've had a president from a rival political party take office in quite some time, okay? I mean, we haven't really had, if you kind of follow this, most of the presidents from 1800 to 1840 are all technically Jeffersonian dependent or descendants, right? So the Jeffersonians and that old Democratic sort of Republican idea had held politics in America for about 40 years before Harrison takes over. Harrison, as he gets ready to take the oath of office, which he'll do so in March of 1841, wants to, now that he's been elected, he really does, he wants to project this image of being presidential, of being tough, okay, but also being academic. So he wants to sort of ride that wave of, yeah, I was born in a log cabin. Yeah, I'm tough. Okay, yeah, I'm ready for this job. But he also wants to show everybody that he's not some backwoods hillbilly. Okay? So, as Harrison sort of made plans for his inauguration, one of the things that he did was he came to Washington, and on Inauguration Day, which, by the way, was pretty wet and pretty cold, okay, he rode his horse to the inauguration instead of being taken there in a carriage. He rode his horse in the inaugural day parade. Okay, he went to several balls that night. Okay, in which he rode his horse to. Okay, kind of showing everybody how tough he is. He also delivered after taking the oath of office, he delivered the longest inauguration speech in American history. Okay, well over 8,000 words. Okay, 2,000 words is what? About 1,000 words is about 2 pages, right? Double spaced. Okay, so you think about it, that's about a 16, 17 page speech. Okay, it's huge. That's after Daniel Webster, one of his closest allies, actually pared it down some. It took him 2 hours to read the speech. Okay? It took him 2 hours in the wet and the cold to read the speech. It may be the reason that something else happens. We'll come back to that. Harrison has a couple of things going on. Inside of his party, inside of the Whigs, there are really 2 kind of factions, okay? There's one faction that identifies and sort of gravitates towards Daniel Webster, okay? Senator from Massachusetts, okay, had been a highly critical opponent of Jackson, okay, is a major force in the Senate. And Harrison tends to be a Websterite, okay? And so that's why Daniel Webster is going to be named Secretary of State, okay? The other force is Henry Clay, who had run for president several times, okay? And Clay really tries to influence Harrison with some of his campaign, some of his cabinet positions. Okay, I really kind of course, think Clay wanted to weasel his way in there somehow or another too, okay? But he is very disappointed. Really, only one person that really is sort of identified with Clay makes it onto the cabinet, okay? So there was already tension early on, okay, as Harrison took office. Well, about 3 weeks into Harrison's presidency, he's pretty ill, okay? He has kind of taken sick with cold, flu-like symptoms, okay? He's not feeling well. And doctors are called to the White House to start treating him. And look, okay, you guys think that we don't really have a handle on, the COVID right now, right? There's all these rumors running around about how to treat it, whatever, right? Well, in 1840, we didn't know squat, okay? And so their solution, these doctors, okay, their solution was first, they thought he had, and he may have, they thought he had pneumonia. And so their solution was to take these they're suction cups, okay? And you heat them up and they will suck very hard to your body. And so they started basically trying, it's called cupping, okay? So they basically start trying to suck out the poisons from him using these suction cups and using bloodletting, okay? Cutting you and letting you release the toxins through your blood as you bleed. Well, that didn't work. Well, duh, of course it didn't work, okay? And so then they started treating him with various things like castor oil. Okay, anybody know what castor oil is? You ever, I mean, this is an old remedy. My grandmom gave me castor oil one time. Okay, this will make you feel better. No, it made me barf all over the place because it's disgusting. All right, so the treatments were probably worse than his disease. Okay, we don't know what. Most people today think he may have had some sort of it may not have been pneumonia. It may have been something like typhoid, okay, which was more serious, but symptoms kind of were the same, and that's what eventually kills him. So less than a month into his presidency, William Henry Harrison dies. He is the shortest serving president in American history. Okay, he only served really about a month. This had never happened. He's also the first president to die in office. Now what do? Okay? So there's about a month of mourning. He is, he's mourned in D.C. His body is brought back to Indiana where he's buried. Okay, so it's a terrible period. But then we have a constitutional question. Okay, you guys all assume that when Harrison dies, what's going to happen? His vice president's going to become president, right? I mean, that's what happens, right? Well, number one, it's never happened before. Okay, so number two, if you go and read that section in the Constitution, it's a little bit ambiguous, okay? And there was already a little bit of doubt, because this had happened to other offices, about what happens if this happens, okay? There are some that believe the Constitution said that what Tyler would essentially become is acting president. In other words, he would still be the vice president, but he would just be the acting president, okay? That he wouldn't technically, there wouldn't be a president, does that make sense? Until the next election. There are others that believe that what he had to do was take the oath of office and he would become president, okay? They actually had to go to the Supreme Court and ask for some opinions about this because the Constitution was a little bit ambiguous. Now, in 1960, 61, I think, we put the 25th Amendment in. And the 25th Amendment removes that ambiguity, okay? Basically, what the 25th Amendment says is that if the president dies, the vice president becomes president, okay? So it takes out that sort of ambiguity about whether or not they are really the president. And so what the Supreme Court and Chief Justice Taney said was, look, he's got to take the oath. If he takes the oath, he becomes president. And so when Harrison died, okay, then Tyler will take the oath and he becomes president. But even among some of the people in his administration, there was a real doubt about whether or not he was the real president or not. Okay, can he really do the things that the president can? For example, could he fire his cabinet and start over? Okay. Can he remove people and replace them? Can he appoint people? Okay. Is he the real president, or is he just somebody that is just supposed to sit there and look good? Okay. The problem, there's a lot of problems with Tyler. Okay. But if you go back, okay, one of the other problems with Tyler is they really didn't do their research very well. okay? The reason that Tyler runs with Harrison, the reason that Tyler had become a Whig was because he didn't necessarily like Jackson, okay? And so he had sort of been drawn into the Whig Party. But he's not a Whig either, okay? He is really a Whig in name only, all right? He, and a lot of his ideas don't necessarily fit into the Whig program, okay? But nobody did enough research, I think, about Tyler to sort of figure that out. And so the first real hints that something is amiss come when the Whigs start pushing their agenda through Congress, okay? So they had said things in the campaign, okay, like they were going to bring back the bank. Remember, Jackson had destroyed the bank. We'd gotten into this huge economic disaster under Van Buren. And so we're going to bring back the bank, okay? So they start trying to push through their agenda. And some of these things are going to make it to Tyler's desk, and what's he going to do? Veto them. Now, if you're a part of let's just say, let's put it in 2020s, okay? Let's say the Democrats are in control of the House, they win control of the Senate, and then they have the president in 2021, okay? So they start pushing through the House and the Senate their ideas, their changes, right? And it gets to their president's desk, okay? And he goes, nope, veto. What do? You guys look around and go, well, okay, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on our side, right? And they're furious with Tyler. Clay and these guys, they are pushing through some of these changes that they want to see happen. They want to undo some of these Jacksonian things. And Tyler starts to veto them. So what do? They kick him out of the party. So the Whigs say, look, you're not a Whig anymore. We're booting you out of the party. They also try to find a way to get him out of the presidency. They're not very successful at that, obviously. But they are really ticked at what Tyler is doing here, okay? When you start seeing him veto all of this stuff, okay, then that's going to really get a lot of people unhappy. Now, despite that, okay, I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? The bank bill is probably the most famous. Clay and others pushed through Congress a bill that would create the third national bank, the third bank of the United States. And Tyler vetoes it. And that was sort of the last straw. And they expel him. Now, he does sign some of the bills that come through. I don't want you to think that he vetoes everything. He doesn't. He signs some of the bills that would, for example, raise the tariffs back up. So there is some movement on the tariff. There is some raising of the tariffs, okay? So it's a moderate raise, and he does sign that. During Tyler's presidency, there are a couple of things that are going on that we ought to at least mention, okay? One of them is our relationship with Great Britain, okay? Now, if you guys remember, I told you during Van Buren's administration, we had really kind of gotten into a little bit of a shindig, really, between us and Canada, right? And it was all about that. It was all about the boundary of Maine. Remember that? we think that the boundary of Maine is way up here, okay? The British think we're nuts and that the boundary of Maine is down here, okay? No one really knows where it is, okay? Relations between us and Great Britain / Canada have not been spectacular in the past couple of years, okay? So from 1837 or so until 1840, 41, 42, there have been several incidents that really kind of look like that we were not on the best of terms, okay? There was an incident, for example, between us and there's an insurrection that goes on in Canada in 1837. Okay, we in 1837 during Van Buren's administration, there was a ship that was burned. Okay. An American ship called the Caroline was set on fire by Canadians in New York. And that's kind of a bad situation, okay? In 1840, we had arrested a man, a Canadian, blamed him for the attack on the Caroline, okay? We threatened to execute him. The British say if you execute him, then that'll mean war, okay? So there's all sorts of little crazy little things that are happening on that show you that relations between us and Great Britain weren't spectacular. In 1841, an American ship called the Creole had been hijacked by a bunch of escaped slaves from Virginia. And they sailed the Creole to the Bahamas, which is technically British territory. And when they get there, we America demands, because of the fugitive slave law and other things, that slaves are viewed as property, that they be returned. What do the British say? Nope. And then we say, okay, well, you have to compensate the slave owners for the loss of their property. And what do the British say? Well, you can probably guess what they say, okay? Middle finger probably extended, okay? Nope, okay? All right, this infuriates American Southerners, of course. Then we've got this boundary dispute, okay, between us and Canada over Maine, which had led to lumberjacks getting arrested and fighting over the Aroostook Valley up there, which had almost led to a war, okay? Let me tell you that Daniel Webster was Secretary of State. One of the best things that Tyler does during his administration is not fire Daniel Webster, okay? He left him as Secretary of State. And to try to calm down some of these tensions, Daniel Webster began to negotiate with his British counterpart, Lord Ashburton, okay? And by 1842, these two have negotiated a treaty with one another, okay? And if you look up there, you see the Webster-Ashburton treaty line, you see that? So in 1842, we negotiate a treaty, Webster negotiates a treaty between the United States and Great Britain. And we call it the Webster-Ashburton Treaty. The biggest thing it does is that. See that red line up there? That becomes the boundary of Maine. We give a little, we take a little, okay? And it becomes the boundary, the permanent boundary for Maine. We kind of apologize for the whole Aroostook affair, okay, and for arresting that British guy and blaming him with the burning of the Caroline. The British kind of apologized for the Creole incident, okay, but nothing's really going to come out of that. But that's a good thing, okay? So that will finally settle that boundary, okay? So the Webster-Ashburton Treaty Line is a good thing, okay? And if there's anything that comes out of Tyler's presidency, all right, this is it, okay? This is about the only thing that we probably should think about. And one of the best things it does is it kind of improves those relations between us and Great Britain that had settled or had soured pretty badly, okay? Now, as we get into this manifest destiny period, okay, we've talked about a lot of these things, okay? We've talked about how things in America are changing, okay? There have been new intellectual movements. We're going to actually talk about some new religious movements later on. Some reforms taking place, the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, the Whigs reemerged the second party system. Okay, we've seen the federal government increase its power a little bit. All you got to do is look at the Marshall Court for that. Okay, nationalism is a big part of of manifest destiny, okay? Westward expansion's a big deal. So we all know these things are going on, okay? But I told you now's the time to start picking them out, okay? And look at what's happened. The Webster-Ashburton Treaty is a good thing, right? We settle those boundaries, right? But, I mean, technically, if you look at where the British thought the boundary was, we got a little territory, right? That's good, okay? And you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that kind of pop up, okay? All right. In 1844, the Democrats see an opportunity. The old Jacksonian Democrats see an opportunity here because Tyler has been booted out of his party, right? And so they don't think Tyler is going to put up a big fight. And so the Democrats nominate James K. Polk. Okay? James K. Polk. Polk runs a very spirited campaign. Okay? Very aggressive, very nationalistic. Okay? Very nationalistic. Polk, during his campaign, essentially told the American people that he had 4 major goals. Okay, I've got 4 big-time goals that I want to accomplish. Okay, when I accomplish them, I'm done. Okay, so he sets out essentially a 4-point program and says, when I finish these things, okay, I'm going to retire. I'm not going to run again. One of the points, okay, one of the kind of planks, and we're going to talk about all 4, but one of the major planks was that Polk wanted to settle what he called the Oregon dispute. Okay? He wanted to settle the Oregon dispute. Okay. Now, after the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, where relations between the United States and Great Britain seemed to be pretty good, okay, woo-hoo, a candidate then starts to run basically on the idea of settling this Oregon dispute. Well, most people kind of look around and go, what Oregon dispute? Okay? What Polk says is that all of the Oregon Territory should be ours. Okay? That we are now going to take control of all of the Oregon Territory. And if the British don't like it, we're going to fight. And so one of the things you start hearing him talk about over and over again is that 54-40 or fight. Okay? And most of you look around and go, what the hell does that mean? Okay? It's the boundary line. Okay? But the 54-40 line is way above what really the rest of the boundary between us and Canada is, which is at 49 degrees. Okay, the 49th parallel. So essentially what Polk has done here during the campaign is say that we're taking all of it. Why? One, very nationalistic. Two, manifest destiny. This whole continent should be ours, right? So we're just taking what's ours. Polk is going to be very aggressive about this. Okay? And so during the campaign, okay, it becomes pretty clear that he's coming out fighting. Okay? 54-40 or fight. Okay? You're going to give us all of the Oregon Territory or we're going to take it. Oof. Okay? The Whigs, remember, fired their sitting president. Okay? The Whigs had fired Tyler, right? Booted him out of the party. And so they were going to run Henry Clay for the presidency. And he's going to be disappointed yet again. Okay? This is like the third time he's run for president and failed. Okay? Start seeing the same stuff. Okay? There's actually a third party, the Liberty Party. So, we kind of think that third parties are pretty modern things, and they're not. Okay? One of the other things that has been lurking around out there is Texas. Van Buren refused to do anything with Texas. Okay? What have Harrison and Polk done, or what have Harrison and Tyler done about it? Zilcho, right? So Texas is still out there as this independent republic. And of course, it would like to be annexed by the United States. There was talk that Polk would, if he had elected, was going to recognize Texas. But if he did, of course, there's still that possibility of a war with Mexico. On Polk's really, during his campaign at least, if he's going to take that stance about Oregon, you can probably guess he's going to take a similar stance about Texas. He's just not going to kind of say it right now. Luckily, he's going to get bailed out. Okay? And I'll tell you how in a minute. Okay? In 1844, the election results, the popular vote is pretty divided, okay? But Polk gets about 62% of the electoral vote and therefore becomes president. Before Polk can take office, okay, during Tyler's last few days, excuse me, Tyler will push through, essentially through Congress, a joint declaration or a joint sort of statement recognizing Texas independence. And when that happens, it becomes pretty clear that the United States is going to recognize Texas independence and move towards annexation. Okay? So during his last days in office, Tyler pushes that through, that joint declaration. And Texas now is going to sort of become the issue, okay? And remember, Polk was kind of over a barrel here, okay? And that's kind of what this little cartoon is making fun of, okay? When Texas is the beast and Polk says that I fear I cannot carry you into the presidential chair, that it was, if he did that, he would be starting a war, right? So Tyler actually sort of takes the brunt of it, and on his last few days in office pushes through that so that Texas will be recognized. Well, what's going to happen? It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. What's going to happen? A war. Okay? We knew it was coming. Okay? Remember me telling you about the goals? Okay? That Polk had 4 major goals coming into office. Well, here they are. Okay? Resolve the Oregon boundary dispute, which he believes is going to be 54-40 or fight. Lower the tariff. Restore the independent treasury, which is kind of a throwback to Van Buren and Jackson. But look at number 4. If you're going to take this position, you already kind of know what your position on Texas is going to be. Okay? What's number 4? Who had control of California? Not us. Who did? Mexico did. This is Mexican territory. So Polk pretty much throws it right out there that what? We're going to acquire California. Now his plan is to sort of buy it. Okay? How willing do you think Mexico is going to be to negotiate with us over buying a piece of territory? Okay? Especially after the whole Texas fiasco. Okay? So if you look up there, throw out the tariff, which is an economic issue. Throw out the independent treasury, which is an economic issue. Okay? And 2 of these goals could potentially result in what? War. One will. Okay? When we talk about manifest destiny, it's not all just about providence guiding us from sea to shining sea. Okay? Nationalism and acquisition of territory sometimes require what? A little bit of fighting, right? And that's what we'll get. All right, we'll stop there. Okay, next time, for those of you that have to tune in remotely, next time we'll do the Mexican War, okay, and we'll finish Polk's administration. And by the way, once we sort of get to that, the slide to the Civil War becomes pretty fast, okay? So we'll talk about that over the next couple of days. All right, see you guys.